Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is John Arcovio, Houston, Texas, and thank you so much for joining us with the Arcovio Ministries page. But today, I was worshiping again this morning. I just been stuck on Matt Gillum's rendition of Holy. The first time I heard this rendition, I was living in Sacramento, South Sacramento, California. I lived in the country, and it was back in 2015 during some very difficult times of transition in our life. And I remember every morning I would get up and I would have my dwell time, my secret time with the Lord by putting on my headphones, and I would walk about 3 miles. I lived in the country. We lived south of Sacramento in an area that was just below an area called Elk Grove. And at that time, God had blessed our life, and we had a beautiful home on several acres of property. And so we were surrounded by vineyards. And so there were several country roads that there was never any traffic, and it was just open vineyards. And I could walk, and I can remember those times. I would walk and just lift my hands just to the top of my lungs, praying in tongues. And I mean, heaven would just come down and visit. And I would just weep and cry, and it'd be for hours. And one of the songs I remember during that time was Matt Gillum's rendition of Holy. And it's just precious, tremendous times of connection with the glory and manifest presence of God. And it just seemed during that season, it was about 8 to 9 months, every day I just lived in that glory bubble, if you could call it. Just every day, that was my agenda, was that first love of just going out and taking that walk and just entering into that place of his presence and glory. And so this morning, again, I put on the YouTube video. I've got it saved on my phone, and I run it through my TV and sound system here in the apartment. And just playing again, Matt Gillum sang so tremendously, again, that rendition of Glory at the Send at the Camping World. And every time he began to sing that, I couldn't do anything else. I just had to fall on my face here in the apartment and just rest in the presence of God, his awesomeness. You know, there's those 4 living creatures, those seraphims, cherubims, angels, what do you want to call them, that had the 4 faces, the lion, the ox, the eagle, and the man. But the thing about that was they've flown around the throne of God now for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And they've had one song, Holy. And the thing about it is God has never gotten tired of that song. You know, we live in such a restless society, and sometimes I go to conferences or I go to meetings where everyone's so pressured to perform and to sing what's hot and what's new, what's the latest. And I've been in meetings myself where God's glory would begin to descend upon that meeting. And I would turn to the keyboardist or the music musician, tell them to stay right there. But they don't understand what that means, because you have to have history in the glory of God. You have to have understanding of what and how to respond in his glory. And when his glory comes, it's not the time to do something and to perform. It's a time to just rest and step into presence and let him transform you, because it's those kairos moments of his glory that we're transformed the most in our lives. And I'll get very frustrated in meetings because, you know, the music ministers that have absolutely no concept of what to do in the glory of God. They're lost. And so they would try to change this song, and it just wrecks everything. And so, you know, it's just understanding and flowing in that glory. And that's my heart's hunger, is, you know, his glory. And just like the seraphims who have cried and sang for thousands and thousands, maybe millions, I don't know how long, but they've circled the throne. They've had one job, and that is to look at him. They had eyes within and eyes without, but their focus was look on his presence. Behold him. Focus. Look at him. And I believe that's what the Holy Spirit is saying in this hour. That's the cry of the Spirit in this hour. Look at me. Get your eyes on me. Lift your eyes above the problems around you in life. See a king who is high and lifted up, sitting on a throne. And let that cry of our hearts come forth. Holy, holy, holy. Because we are in a time of the shifting of the glory of God moving from visitation to habitation, to an indwelling presence of his Spirit. I'm going to close this little short jam session. I try to keep these about 5 to 7 minutes long. Again, thanks for joining us. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see who's commenting. I'm so sorry. Let me come up here and see. We got Don Osmer, God bless you. Jason, God bless you. Keith McCann, hey, God bless you. Jonathan and Angel, hey, Pastor Jonathan from Yakima, Washington. Keith, hey, my old friend. God bless you, man. Keith and I go way back. That's way back to the CLC days, man. Good to see you, bro. But, we got a hunger for his glory. We're in a time of the manifestation of the presence of God. And God is looking for believers that have history and that know what to do in the presence of his glory, that know how to respond. That's going to become very, very, very important in this season, in this year, 2019, of the manifestation of God's glory. And I remember the first time I ever experienced God's glory. It was in the summer of 1985. Back then, I used to do a lot of radical fasting because I was in a denomination that taught little prayer, little power, much prayer, much power. And being a typical AAA battery choleric, I thought, well, then if much prayer and fasting is much power, well, then I'm going to go over the top. And so I used to do a lot of radical fasting. And I won't talk about it because I don't want to encourage somebody to damage their health by it. But fasting is good if you do it within the understanding of healthy eating, preparing for it. And I got a whole book I'm writing on that, about how to fast 21 days, 28 days, 35 days, 40 days. And there's a way you can do it and not wreck your health. So anyway, during one of these times of fasting, I remember, I must have been 18, probably 19, I don't know. It was a long time ago. Like I said, 85, 86. And that time, I went on just an extended fast, and towards the end of that fast, God just kept waking me up in my apartment that I lived in, and he would just nudge me to pray. Well, in my mind, that meant go to the church and pray. And I didn't know how to make my surroundings my dwelling place, how to just turn right there on the floor by the side of my bed and just enter into the secret place. And so that time, all I had was a 10-speed bicycle, and so I would ride that bike. It was 4 or 5 miles out to the church location. And I remember that particular night. I got there, and I remember that during that season, anytime I would try to pray, like in the kitchen area that was authorized as a prayer room, or the sanctuary, people would come and just interrupt me right when I was getting into that place of the deep depth of his presence. It was stupid stuff. Just, people just sometimes are just clueless. And so I remember that particular night, it was about 10 o'clock at night. I didn't want nobody bothering me because I could sense there was a presence of God that descended upon me. There was a heaviness that came upon me as a young man. And I remember they had an attic, and so I pulled down the attic ladder, and I climbed up in the attic, and I pulled up the ladder, and I took the rope, and I tied it off so no one could open the ladder, because I was going to touch him. I was not going to be disturbed. And I remember it was dark in the attic. It was pitch black, and they had some plywood where there wasn't any insulation on. And so I lay down that plywood, and I just began to pray, and I started praying in tongues. But after about 30 minutes of praying in tongues, I went into deep intercession. I just went into what the Bible talks about, groanings which cannot be uttered, and just began to what is called travail. And it's kind of a lost art in our hour, but I believe God's going to bring it back around again. And all I can tell you is I lost sense of time. I went into such a deep presence and glory of God that I just completely lost all sense of time. I remember I was laying there and I was like in a fetal position, just groaning and praying, and such a glory, a heaviness of God had come down upon that time of intimacy with Jesus. And I mean, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, just hours just slipped by. And I was so lost in prayer. I remember somewhere probably about 3 in the morning, it might have been 4 in the morning, just subconsciously, I thought, I can't keep this up physically. I don't have the strength to continue this, because there was such a heaviness that came on me of prayer, of weeping, and just in his presence. And I remember it was somewhere about 4:35 in the morning as I was travailing. All of a sudden, that dark attic became just flooded with light. I remember I was praying and I had my head in my arm like this. So my eyes were completely covered. I remember that when that light flooded that attic, it was so bright, even with my face like this, I could not bear the light. It was so bright. And I can remember like it happened yesterday. As I was praying, as I was crying out to God, I could hear what sounded like fluttering of wings all around me. It's all I could describe it. Just movement, just all around above me. But there was such a fear of God that descended upon me as a young man that I almost couldn't breathe. It was just such a heavy, thick presence, and I literally felt like I was gonna die. The heaviness just pressed on me, so heavy. And that heaviness lasted for about another hour and a half until sunrise, about 6:30. And that's when that anointing from the heavens lifted from me. And I remember when it lifted and I stopped praying in the Spirit, I was so weak I couldn't even lift my hand off the ground. When I finally got up to go downstairs and wash my face, and I was working a construction job, so I knew I had to be at work at 7:30, so I had to get going. I remember that day at the age of 18 years old, my life was forever transformed by that visitation of God's presence. There was a transformation that had taken place deep, deep inside of me. I could sense. And since that time in 1985, I've never been the same. Beloved, we got to hunger for His glory. We're in a season and a time that the glory of God is being manifest in our midst. And we have to hunger and we have to thirst for the manifest presence of God. God bless you.